in a world full of negative people. Hey man, I'm just trying to be a positive guy, a positive farmer, a positive outfitter. This is a Shark Farmer podcast with your host, Rob Sharkey. Whatever.
And welcome again to the Shark Farmer podcast. Hey, I'm your host, Rob Sharkey. And today we're going to go down to Tennessee, Lexington, Tennessee. We're going to talk with a doctor, like a real life doctor, not like a Dr. Dre or Dr. Pepper. We're going to talk to Dr. Leah Gilliam. How you doing, Leah?
Doing well. How are you?
Do I call you Leah or do I call you doctor or ma'am? I don't even know.
Leah will be fine. We're informal here today.
Okay, but like if you were in your office there and you had someone that had this coronavirus, it would be doctor, right?
Yeah, Dr. Gilliam.
All right, Dr. Leah Gilliam, I've got to do an ad. Is that okay?
That's fine.
I don't like doing this ad, but I agreed to it, so I'm going to do it, and that's all there is. So today's podcast is brought to you by Shark Farmer TV. Hey, Leah, did you know that there's a brand new show coming to RFD TV on the Dish Network?
No.
Yeah. I can't even read this thing with a serious face. It literally said, wait for reply. Here's the deal. So it's coming in February, March, maybe. I don't know. They keep changing the dates. We will be launching our show with RFD TV. They're producing it. They're like all the professional TV people and stuff. It's like you're talking to a camera and then there's people in a booth yelling at you, but you can't hear them because they're yelling at the guy running the camera. It's pretty interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah. How far is Nashville from Lexington?
It's about 2 hours. We're right between Memphis and Nashville.
Okay, because that's where I go to film this thing is Nashville. And
Great city.
Well, it is. But here's the thing. It's kind of nice because we do like 4 at a time for over 2 days. So I do 2 one day and then 2 the next day. I don't know. They mesh them all together. I don't know how it works. But it's nice because like at the end of it, I'm kind of tired. I don't want to go out. When you go out in Nashville and you get a drink, it's literally like $20 to get a beer.
It is. It's expensive. It's been a while since I've done the nightlife thing in Nashville, but yeah, it can add up quickly.
How much does a beer cost you in Lexington?
A couple bucks most.
$2?
Oh yeah. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of bars. We just got liquor by the drink a couple months ago. There's not a whole lot of nightlife here.
What do you mean liquor by the drink?
Like you couldn't go to a restaurant and order a mixed drink.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
It's a very religious community. And so it's just taken a while for people to get comfortable with that.
Do you know here you can't buy alcohol at the old Casey's or the 7-Eleven or whatever before 2 o'clock? It's called the Blue Laws on Sunday.
Yeah. We have those too.
Do you? Do you guys still use Confederate money down there?
You know, I haven't seen any in a while.
Yeah, times are changing, Leah.
They're probably hanging on to it. Yeah.
You know, someone's got like a coffee can full of General Lee dollars buried in their backyard.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely.
Oh, what we're talking about. Oh, yeah, the show. All right. So here's the deal. I want to take people that are very cool, like on the internet, and are doing very cool things in agriculture, and maybe aren't getting a whole lot of recognition. We want to do that when we want to highlight them on this show, and also throw in some funny and interesting and cool videos or pictures. I don't know. Does this sound interesting, Leah?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you just saying that, like if you heard that description in the TV guide, would you watch it?
I would, actually. My husband and I mean, we're the ones, to plug RFD TV, we know our weed of the week, have watched Machinery Pete and all that stuff.
There you go.
I come home in the afternoon and I catch him watching cattle sales on TV.
They do that. They like cattle auctions and tractor auctions. I mean, who would have thought that would have had a lot of ratings, but they do.
They do.
Do you know who I think the highest rated show on that network is?
Who's that?
The Polka. Molly B and the Polka Show.
Yeah, I've not picked up on that one myself, but I've caught a minute here or there. not my thing, but you know what? More power to the ones that enjoy it.
I'm not even kidding. I went to a farm show in Minnesota with RFD and in a booth, and I'm not within the first 15 minutes, 2 people came up and asked if Molly was there.
That's great.
I think it's awesome. Yeah. So please watch my show, please, so I can stop.
Yeah, sure.
So I can stop doing these ads. All right. Today we're talking with Dr. Gilliam. Now you are like a real life doctor.
Yes, MD.
Okay. What do you call, like, are you a family practitioner? Are you a neurosurgeon? What are you?
Family physician.
Family.
I'm a family physician.
What's the difference between physician and practitioner?
We dropped the practitioner title a few years ago just to emphasize that we're a physician like everybody else. We're not just out there playing around. We're professionals. We have our patients' care at the forefront of our mind, and we thought that the physician title better emphasized that than practitioner.
All right. How long have you been a doctor?
I graduated from medical school in 2013. I had a 3-year residency, and so I've been out of residency now for about 3.5 years.
And you specifically are a rural doctor?
I am, yeah. I have a small practice in Lexington.
Now, was that planned? Did you want to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Back in high school, I kind of started picking up on the fact that people weren't exactly satisfied with our healthcare. We had a kid that was a couple years younger than me that got hurt at football practice. He went to the hospital. They didn't recognize the extent of his injuries, and the kid wound up losing his leg over it.
Oh,
and
gosh.
So there was, there's a lot of mistrust in the medical community in my neck of the woods. And I grew up in a healthcare family. My mom's an administrator. I just kind of always felt like my community deserved better. This was always the plan. It just so happened that I married a beef cattle farmer who's from the area. He's not going to pick up and move anywhere. And so it's worked out that this is where I am, and I'm happy to be here.
You can say, because it's your husband, our farmers are the worst patients.
I enjoy it. There are some challenges that I get these old farmers, that are kind of crabby and they're just a little bit of a tough nut to crack. And I like the challenge. I lived for a couple years after my parents divorced with my dad, who is a single guy and a little crabby in his own right sometimes. It's a challenge. I enjoy dealing with those old guys.
I'm sure there's farmers around where I live that still don't understand why they let women into med school.
Yeah, there are a couple of them, but I get a lot of comments lately that people enjoy female physicians more. We have a tendency to spend more time with our patients, and there are actually several studies that show that you get better outcomes when you're seeing a female physician.
Okay, you married a beef farmer. Did you have like an ag background as a kid?
Absolutely not. My mom's healthcare administrator. My dad was in manufacturing. I grew up in town, and so it was really foreign to me. My husband and I started dating when we were in high school, so he really introduced me to all this. I think I'm a little better than your average convert, but I'm not an expert.
When did you decide you were going to become a doctor?
We have videos of me when I was 4 years old getting Dr. Barbie for my birthday and just losing my mind, excited over it. But I don't think I actually made a decision to do that until I was in high school. And it was a tough decision. It's a lot of school. It's a lot of work to go through. And there's no guarantee that once you get those prerequisites and go get a biology degree that you're going to get into med school. And if you don't get into med school, what do you do with a biology degree in a rural community? There was a lot of doubt, but I finally committed to it senior year of high school.
Okay, and don't act like you don't know this. What TV show influenced you the most to become a doctor?
ER.
Really? You're a Noah Wiley?
It was ER.
Yeah.
Yeah. Noah Wiley, George Clooney. Yeah, those guys. I watched a ton of it. I think it was more medically accurate than a lot of shows. Of course, now you watch it and the effects are completely outdated, but I still like it.
I remember that show, and when it first came out, they were all wearing masks in the operating room and like the ER, and then I don't think you could see their faces, so they dropped them.
Yeah. And to be honest, that's probably more realistic in some of those scenes in the ER. It's jump in there and get things done, and I will say I've seen a lot of people working on patients in the ER that aren't wearing the masks, but in the operating room, it's a little different.
Are you smart?
I think so.
Okay.
I hope my patients think so.
I mean, book smart. I mean, were you worried about going through medical school? Because I couldn't do it.
Undergrad actually was harder for me than medical school. You know, a lot of that stuff it doesn't feel as applicable, the organic chemistry and the physics and all of that you have to take to even get into medical school. But once you get into med school, one, there's a lot of support. There's a lot of money invested in getting you through. And so they have people who are there to help you if you're struggling. But also it just feels different because you know that these things that you're learning are things that are going to apply to real people's lives. I can't say that I felt that way when it was physics class and we were calculating the velocity of a flying object or whatever. That I didn't care for, but I did well in medical school. I really enjoyed it.
Do you know, I've never measured the shadow of a flagpole and then the angle of the earth to find out how tall that pole is in my professional career.
Yeah.
Never done it once.
Exactly. And you have to have that background to be able to learn the medicine, but it feels so esoteric at the time. It was a struggle with some of the prerequisites in med school, or prerequisites to med school. Yeah, once I got there, it was game on. I was ready.
I'm trying to remember, like the time when you were going through med school, because I remember growing up, the doctor was a guy with a Ferrari and everything was gold. I mean, when you were going through, everything was changing, right? We had Obamacare and all this stuff. Did you know when you graduated that, it might not be the same as the guy that was a doctor 20 years ago?
Oh, absolutely. And there was good and bad in that. I think everybody likes the idea of making a ton of money and being the hero to your community and being super respected and all that. But doctors have kind of gotten away with a lot for a long time. And I think there needed to be some shift in the system to some extent. Now, whether or not all that change has been good is up for debate. I don't think anybody really knows what their career is going to be like until they're out there doing it. So maybe some of that ignorance is bliss,
I've never minded the fact that my doctor was very rich. And I like that, like, research scientists can be very rich. I've never minded that fact because when I need them to be good.
And there's truth in that. And the fact that, when you go to medical school, I finished medical school at 27 years old, 3 years of residency, making about $50,000 a year, working 80 hours a week, and had $206,000 in debt just from medical school to pay off when I graduated. And so we really don't get started on our career until we're in our 30s. Whereas friends that went and got a 4-year degree and went into accounting got started at 22. And so there's a lot of ground to make up and a lot of debt to pay off. I think that some of what we earn is warranted. Now, I'm a little different because I do own my own practice and I'm in a rural community. I don't make the banks big city doctors make, but I'm happy with my career. I have no complaints about finances.
Yes, and you're teasing that. I can't wait to talk about the way you set up your billing, but let's not get ahead of ourselves, shall we, Leah?
Yeah.
So you graduate medical school, and then what happens?
3 years of residency, working as a physician, but with close supervision. Those were the 3 hardest years of my life. I mean, literally 80 plus hours per week. The losses were only supposed to work 80, but that gets fudged because you need to learn. You got 3 years to really nose to the grindstone, learn everything you need to learn. And then you're out there on your own with people's lives in your hands. It's hard work and it is exhausting, but it's very necessary. I don't think I could have skipped that experience and taken decent care of anyone.
And after you get done with that, what happens?
I took a position as an employed physician. I worked for a hospital system that had opened up a clinic in my hometown, and that just wasn't for me. Spent 2 years working for them. The traditional system kind of chewed me up and spit me out, seeing 30 patients a day, patients with complex health issues. For example, you might have a patient with diabetes and high blood pressure and, history of a heart attack. And then they're seeing you that day and they think they might have a urinary tract infection, but you've got 15 minutes to manage all of that. In addition to getting your notes done and getting all of that documented so that you can bill for it. I was never done on time. I ran late all the time. My patients would wait over an hour to see me, and then I felt like I had to rush in and rush out because there were more patients who were waiting. It wasn't what I thought medicine should be.
It's an awful big step from going from med school to your residency to that first job where it's all taken care of for you to actually what you're doing now with your own practice.
Yeah, it was a huge step and a scary step. You know, I was in a position where I had a guaranteed paycheck. I just had to show up and get the work done. But when you've put as many years into training for medicine as I've put in, you want to feel good about the work you're doing at the end of the day. And I just didn't quit the employed position, and I opened my own practice a little over a year ago.
And how does that work? Do you just hang a shingle and hope people find you?
You know, in a small town, people are pretty good about sharing when they find out where you're at. And, you know, I had patients that were really very loyal to me. Facebook has been a huge advertising source, but I'm right off Court Square. Across from the electric system, people go to pay their bill, they see my office. And so it's not too hard to get the word out in a community like this.
And let's just dive right into it. Explain how your practice works.
So I'm a little different. I do what's called direct primary care, which means we've cut out all the third parties who are sticking their nose in your business. I don't bill insurance. It's $50 a month for patients to see me. It covers all their office visits. There's no limit on how many times they can see me. So I may see somebody 3 times in a month and then not see them for 6 months, but they're paying $50 every month. They get a basic panel of lab work included 3 times a year at no extra charge. I'm actually available to my patients, which I think is the biggest shocker to people. All my patients have my cell phone number. They can call me, text me on the weekend. If there's something I can do to keep them from having to go to urgent care, we'll do that. If I'm not busy and I can run to the office and meet them, we'll do that. When you call my office and you're sick and you need to be seen, because I don't have to drag people in for an appointment in order to get paid, my schedule tends to be more open, which means when you're sick, you actually get to see your own doctor. And people just aren't used to that anymore. So it's a different way of doing things. But I think it's allowed me to be a better physician. And since healthcare costs have gone through the roof, everybody has at least a $1,500 deductible now. Copays to see a family physician are at least $30. My personal copay on my insurance is $60 if I want to go to a primary care provider and file my insurance for it. It's just expensive. And so I can keep costs low. I can make healthcare really convenient without even dealing with your insurance.
To me, $50 a month seems way too low.
And for some people it is. Now, when you have a family of 4, that can add up. And I do offer lower rates for kids because they don't seem to get as sick and need as much. But it's enough to cover my costs. A typical family physician will have a patient panel of about 3,000 patients. If I have a panel of 600 patients, that's $300,000 a year at $50 per patient per month. And so if I keep my overhead low, I'm still making better money than I was making in a traditional practice. And I'm providing you with affordable health care.
To me, though, the biggest thing that that's an impressive number. But I can't imagine what your insurance costs.
It's really not as bad as you think.
Really?
No. And other specialties, it's a bigger issue, certainly surgical specialties, OBGYNs, because, you know, when an OBGYN has a bad day, then there's a baby at stake. Their malpractice is much higher. My malpractice is about $6,500 a year. And then I have an additional policy that's about $1,000 a year on my building and just general liability insurance. So it's not terrible. Yeah, my overhead's really low.
Honestly, if you would have added a 0 to that, I would have thought you would have been into the 6 figures for your insurance.
No, and that is, you know, most people think that it is that expensive. To be honest, I could have a cheaper policy. There's a point in time when I was considering helping out our county jail and providing some health care there, and so I had to get a more expensive policy to cover that. But I wound up not doing that, so I could probably call my insurance company and get that knocked down a bit at this point.
The one thing that I hate about, and you mentioned urgent care, and I'll have like a cough. It's, you know, every other year I'll get a cough, and I never go until I literally can't sleep at night. So I'll go like 2 weeks just coughing up a storm before I finally, all right, I've got to go to, and then I go to these quick places. because I like that. I like that I can just go in there, I pay $50. I don't have to put it on the insurance or anything like that. But I'm still waiting 2 hours in there. That's what I hate about it, is you give up so much part of your day just
Yeah.
for an antibiotic.
Yeah. I mean, it can be really inconvenient. And the funny thing is, it's designed to be a convenience type practice. But during cough and cold season, those guys are packed. And so my appointments are scheduled for longer. I schedule 30 minutes a patient. And most people nationwide that are practicing this way will schedule longer appointment slots. But I schedule 30 minutes a patient, which means I actually have time to deal with what people need dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't run behind. And so when my patient calls in the morning and says, hey, do you have an opening today? And I say, yeah, I get here at 3 o'clock. I see you at 3 o'clock. The most I've ever run behind is 20 minutes. But I see you and we get your needs met and you get out the door. And so while I'm scheduling longer slots, you're spending less time in my office.
You're an anomaly. You know that?
Well, there are actually a lot more of us that are doing this now. Last I checked, there are about 1,200 doctors nationwide that are practicing this way. It's really a growing trend, and I think it's being driven in part by the changes in insurance and those higher deductible policies that everyone seems to have right now. I think there are a lot of physicians that recognize that our patients deserve better than what the system's giving them.
I would love this. I would love to do this, and I would probably be one of those guys you never hear. Here's my $50, and you might hear from me like once in every 3 years. But then I could just go in and I could just jack the deductible up. I don't know. Let's say I need my gallbladder out or something. Yeah. I could drop my insurance, because 90% of the time it's pretty much just going in and getting antibiotics, or I broke my finger or something.
Yeah. And I never encourage anyone to go without insurance. You know, say you're out on the farm and you have an accident on your tractor, there's a major trauma event, you can go bankrupt trying to pay those bills. So I wouldn't encourage anybody to drop the plan altogether, but get the cheapest insurance you can get the high deductible policy. You really can save a lot of money paying out of pocket for your health care, and it can be more convenient too. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Talk to me about the difference between practicing medicine in a rural setting and practicing medicine in an urban setting.
Oh, it's a world of difference. I tell people sometimes I feel like I'm out in the Wild West practicing. And not everyone here has the resources available that people in the city have. If I need to refer someone to a specialist, the closest specialist in that field may be 2 hours away. Mm-hmm. And for some of our patients, especially our poorer patients in rural communities, 2-hour transportation that's a lot. They may not be able to even drive the distance to get there. They may not have a car that they can trust to drive down the interstate. And so I think my spectrum of practice, the things that I can comfortably treat, is probably broader than a lot of physicians in cities. You know, in addition to that, there's just the sense of community that we have. You know, I've got patients that live right down the street, and a lot of times they're out walking in the summer and they just stop in and say hi. We're part of the family. They know us. When I left my last job, I literally had patients who showed up on my front doorstep wanting to know where I was going. There's good and there's bad in that, but I really feel like I have more of an opportunity here to be part of people's lives and not just a tool that's available for their use. We're all part of the same community, and what's good for my community is good for me. And so I really do, try to get involved in things and try to contribute where I can. It's more fulfilling, I think.
Is there a group of local retired farmers that have found out where you keep the spare key, break in the morning, start your coffee so that they can sit there and talk about the rest of the farming world?
No, but I do have that, we have to make time in their appointments to talk about my cow. I had a bottle calf last winter that didn't do so well, and I went a little nuts. I couldn't let her go, and so she wound up at an academic center and spent a month in the hospital and had a tracheostomy in her throat and all this so that she could breathe. And so half the town knows about my cow, and we have to make time to check in on Betsy when we come in for your blood pressure follow-up.
Okay, let me get serious for a second, because rural medical care is a very serious issue. We've got to drive, 30, 40 minutes. We can handle. There's a lot of people that can't. How can a rural community attract someone like yourself to invest in them?
I mean, it's really difficult. it takes a special person to come into a community like this and to not just do the job, but to feel at home with people.
Mm-hmm.
I think financial incentives are certainly part of that. Don't make quite as much money in a rural community as you do in a city, but that's certainly not the full package. That is a challenge that, a lot of states are addressing. We have a rural health association, and we have a rural partnership that it's their job to go out and find physicians and attract them to small towns. But I don't have all the answers for that, in all honesty. I think part of it is that we've got to raise our physicians. I try to be very open when there's a kid in the community that wants to go into medicine. It's come to my office, spend time with me, work with me, let me help you through this process. Let me help you get into medical school, because I can't do it all. I can't be the only physician in town. We're not a huge city, but we've got 16,000 people in this county. There's no way I can be responsible for all those people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think to an extent, taking our teenagers that are in high school and that are making those career decisions and saying, you can do this, let me help you, is what it's going to take, because you got to get somebody who's comfortable in a rural community ahead of time for them to even consider coming in later. We have a lot of these rural health association grants, that money that gets that they'll give to physicians who are going into underserved areas. But a lot of times people come in, they work for the 3 years to pay that off, and then they're gone. It really is not what our community needs so much. We need people who are gonna be here and stay here. And so I think training our kids to do the job is the best way to fill that need.
Can you do that? Can you get your community together? I mean, you ever heard of it? It's like, all right, there's this nice house over here. Can we all buy it for a doctor? Can we give, raise, I don't know, $100,000 for like a signing bonus? Does any of that stuff ever get done?
Not so much for, buying them a house and things like that. But yeah, there's signing bonuses and things like that are offered. Usually it's through a hospital. And so if you have a rural hospital, that may be the best way to do it. But our rural hospitals are really struggling right now, and so that can become kind of difficult. I've never seen a community really that thought to do that, but it would be possible. I mean, if a community wanted to raise the funds and then contract with a physician recruiter to try to find somebody to fill that role, it would be possible. If you make it easy for them and then you make it profitable, it's very possible that you could bring in someone.
I'm just thinking that off the cuff because, we used to have someone that did like a rotating thing to like the small communities.
Yeah,
they would do one a week. It wasn't sustainable. And I get it. I mean, if you go through med school and you're smart, you've earned a comfortable living, in my opinion, at this point, if you're good at what you do.
Yeah. I never seek to be rich. I feel like I've at least earned the right to not have to worry about whether the bills are going to be paid. You know, the bills should be paid. I should have a roof over my head. I shouldn't worry about whether or not my car is going to break down.
Exactly.
Be able to worry about caring for my patients. And I think that's fair.
When I go into the doctor, I'm just going to tell him is the minimal amount of information that I have to. If I have a cough, I need a Z-Pack. I'm just going to say I've had this cough for 2 weeks. I had a cold. I just can't kick it. I'm not going to tell him anything else, even if I feel it's relevant, because I don't want to go in and do a bunch of testing. Does that make me a bad patient?
Not a bad patient. I think it makes you typical. I get a lot of that. And sometimes it is pulling teeth to get the rest of that history out when you suspect there's more to the story. We do need you to just tell us everything. Just tell us. It makes our job a whole lot easier, and we can take care of you a whole lot better that way.
All right. Yes. You got to be honest with this. Do you see that more in the rural setting than you did in the urban, that we're stubborn and we don't tell you stuff?
There's a mix. There really is a mix. I'm not that person that's going to tell your medical history to your neighbor. I'm not. What you tell me in my office is confidential. And so I have some patients who I get to know very well, who trust me very well, who will just spill it. They'll lay it all out on the table. And then I have the other patients that are terrified if they tell anybody that, the whole town's going to know their secrets. So I think there's a mix, but probably overall it's about the same. There are different forces at play in that issue.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell you anything. Not a thing. Just give me my Z-Pack. Are you worried about that with the antibiotics? Are you worried? Because that's all I want when I go in. I want my Z-Pack, and it's going to cure my cough.
Yeah.
I've been through it.
I do worry about it a lot. Send off somebody has a urinary tract infection, and I send off a culture, and it's gotten to the point where I have patients that have to get admitted to the hospital because the only antibiotics that will treat their infections are IV antibiotics. I've had patients when I was in residency and still seeing patients in the hospital. I had patients that had infections that we didn't have antibiotics to treat. The cultures were showing that it was resistant to everything. And so it really is something that frightens me quite a lot. And to be honest, Z-Packs don't work very well anymore because they have been overused for so many years. They were entirely too convenient to prescribe when they came out. And so they got used a lot, and they just really don't do what they used to.
No, I need that. Every 2 years, I need one. Don't be screwing that up.
I'll let you duke that out with your local doctor.
All right. We're talking rural medicine. A lot of talk about mental health in rural communities. Very isolated, very much a stigma. You're a medical doctor, but I'm sure you get patients in there that it's obvious that they've got some mental health problems.
Yeah. And it's a huge issue. And I do think that's one of those areas where my spectrum of practice is broader than the typical family physician. When I was in residency, I was in a bigger city, and I was trained that if somebody has bipolar, you just refer them to a psychiatrist. Well, there's not a psychiatrist in our community.
Yeah.
We have a couple mental health clinics that are staffed by nurse practitioners, but you can't get anybody in there. It takes 3 months to get them scheduled for a first appointment. And so if I've got a bipolar patient who's having a manic episode and they're really unstable, I've got to be able to do something about that. And so that is something that I've had to get a lot more used to in the last few years. Since I am in this rural area, we don't have good access to therapists and counselors. And so I kind of have to step into that role to an extent. It's really difficult when it becomes more than I can handle. But we use the resources we have available. If I've got somebody that can travel to the city, can go to Nashville or Memphis, a lot of times that is our only option, because even the next town over that has 100,000 people, there's no psychiatrist I can refer to. Psychiatry is one of the more underpaid fields in medicine, and it's tough to get people to smaller towns as a result. It's a huge challenge. I think too that sometimes the rural lifestyle for some people, it can breed some mental health issues. Agriculture is not easy. And when you have a down year and you are not expecting to make a profit on a crop that you've put months of work into, that can absolutely breed some anxiety and depression. And you have to have a relationship with a physician who can treat that. And for most folks, it becomes their family physician.
I used to raise hogs, and when you're raising hogs, you have ones that get sick, you treat them, they die. I make mistakes. They were hogs, not a big deal. You're dealing with people. Are you able to leave that at the office?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I do think that's the benefit of being married to a farmer and not married to someone else who's in my field, where he can be very sympathetic and he really does try to listen. There's a lot about what I do that he can't understand because it's just completely foreign. And so I kind of have to check some of that at the door in order to keep our relationship strong. But at the end of the day, I do care about people. And so when I have a patient that I've been seeing for some time who really isn't doing well, it wears on you. And there's no way to just stop feeling, and you really wouldn't want to. I am invested in my patient's care. I will go to the funeral home for visitation when somebody passes away. I will sit and talk to their family, and really, I do mourn their loss. It's tough sometimes. And especially here because, we get the opportunity in a smaller community to see more of a response. I drive past the funeral home and I see their name on the board. I know the people in the community that cared about them that are also mourning that loss. I think it hits harder sometimes here.
Used to be in small towns, you had your staples. You had the doctor, you had the preacher, you had the barber, you had the bartender, right? And those were just the staples in the small town rural communities. And we've lost that. You still got the bartenders, right? But you see, we've lost that, and I think it's really hurt the rural communities, because these were, like you said, you're more than just a job. But that was the person that did go to the visiting hours. And, that was the person that you always saw, like on, the Labor Day parade. That was always a person that was well known and respected in the community. And I think it's a damn shame that a lot of these communities have lost that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the one that always comes to mind, there was a hardware store that's about 2 blocks from where my office is now. And the lady that ran the hardware store, her name was Willie B. And Willie B knew the plumbing of everybody's house in the whole county. You knew you could just walk into the hardware store and there was somebody who could answer your questions. And she's passed away. And the guys that are running those places now are great, but it's not the same as having that one point person. It really has been a big change. I don't know how you get that back. I think a lot of it, everything is just so commercial, and there's, all the chain stores, and it loses something. Yeah.
I want to thank you for staying rural. We need it. We need it a lot more than I think anybody truly realizes. And I'm hoping that maybe, if someone's thinking about going in the medical field, they'll listen to you and they'll have this in the back of their mind. I know you give up some stuff, but hopefully there's a lot more benefits than the losses to what you've decided to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of joy in this.
Yeah. I mean, do I give you my address for the Z-Pack, or how's this work?
Just tell me the pharmacy. I'll send it.
Walmart.
Oh, no, that's the wrong answer. That's the wrong answer. Support your local pharmacy.
I don't have one. I wish I did, or else, we would have. But
I hate that. We are lucky we still have a few good old locally owned pharmacies they make all the difference in the world.
I do remember when we did have a small town doctor. His name was Dr. Apathy. Can you believe that? Not even making that up. Yeah, it was perfect. Yes, the one thing that he did was before football season, he would be the one that came in and checked for hernias in a very insensitive way. Now, has that become your job?
Well, no. But I will be honest, one of the old farmer friends has informed everyone at the local bank that if they need a prostate check, I'm available.
God bless you, Dr. Gilliam, for putting up with old farmers.
Yeah, they're great.
Dr. Leah Gilliam. Now, where could people find you?
You can check out my website. It's www.thedoctorsoffice.me. Or you can look us up on Facebook. It's The Doctor's Office at 83 South Main.
Doctor's Office. What was it? Doctor's Office Me?
.me, yeah.
.me. What's me? I've never even seen a .me.
Well, .me is cheaper than .com is what that is.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Fantastic. Well, Lee, it's been a lot of fun, and thank you for investing yourself in rural America. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Doc, thank you, and to everybody else, we'll catch you next time.
And thank you for listening to the Shark Farmer Podcast. I am your host, Rob Sharkey. Please visit us at www.sharkyfarms.com. And just search for Shark Farmer to follow me on Twitter. Later.